just connecting. Let me just bring this up on my phone. Okay, OET, and it should be on there. It's not actually. What's going on? Okay, there we are. Live on YouTube. Fantastic. Cool, so now I can chat to you guys on YouTube Live. That's awesome. And how many people we got in the live class? Only 30, not many. I'm a little bit early. If you have any questions, pop them into the chat. We'll just wait a couple of minutes. Who do we have? We have Hawker in Cairo, Palveta, nurse in India, Ayang Park Ayang, nursing in Australia, Grace, nursing, Simone, Italy, cool. Okay, you guys are taking the exam on the 19th of May. So there's an exam coming up on this Saturday, which I think most people will be preparing for, or in this live class at least. Still only 33 in the live class. I wonder why. It's very low numbers. Strange. Okay, 85 people on YouTube Live. That's okay. If you have any questions, put them into the chat. We'll just wait one more minute. I'm Herbert Manello, in a jail nurse in the Philippines. Interesting. ICU nurse from Taiwan is Ying, and J. Judianne from the Philippines. All right, we got 100. Hi, we got a doctor from Sydney. That's cool. All right, we got 100 on YouTube Live. That's nice. And we got 34 in the Zoom live class. That's cool. Let me bring up my slides. I'm not sure, you may have seen this last month. I did this presentation last month, but nevertheless, it's still going to be helpful for you. Really, this presentation is for people taking the exam this Saturday, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to look at some last minute tips for the OET, and these are extremely important, so I want you to pay close attention because these will help you enormously, all right? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at last minute tips for writing, reading part A, listening part A, and speaking. These tend to be the most difficult tasks, particularly writing and reading part A. Let's firstly look at writing. I'll give you a bit of an overview. So this is what's going to happen. You're going to be given a set of case notes. These are profession-specific case notes. So if you're a doctor, you're going to be looking at doctor case notes. If you're a radiographer, you'll look at radiography case notes. You'll have 5 minutes to sit and read, no writing. Then you'll have 40 minutes to write, and you'll have to write a referral letter, a discharge letter, a transfer letter, or an information letter. But typically, the most common type of letter is a referral letter, okay? So usually referring to a specialist. Now, this is going to be different for different professions. So yes, that's right. So nurses, you might be writing to a physio. Doctors, you might be writing to a dermatologist, for example. It's typically a referral letter. No problem. So here are the tips. First of all, you need to read the task. I'm going to look at these one by one, by the way. So we'll look at them in depth. Number 2, you need to interpret the case notes correctly. 3, you need to select relevant case notes. 4, you need to organize the case notes logically. And 5, you need to transform the case notes accurately to write a letter that's between 180 to 200 words. Let's look at why it's important to read the task and why this is so critical. Just spend 20 seconds reading this task, please. Okay, it says, this is located at the bottom of the case notes. It says, using the information in the case notes, write a letter of referral for further investigation and definitive diagnosis to the gastroenterologist, Dr. Jason Roberts at Newtown Hospital, 111 High Street, Newtown. There is a lot of information in here and you have to unpack it. First of all, you're writing a referral letter. Okay, fine. That's the type of letter you're writing, the type. There you go. Why are you writing? Further investigation and definitive diagnosis. That's the reason why you're writing the letter. Now, who are you writing to? Well, you're writing to a gastroenterologist. That's the who. And more specifically, it's Dr. Jason Roberts at Newtown Hospital, blah, 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 blah. That's where that goes in the address. Okay. So there's lots of information in here. Okay. Next, after you've read the task and you've fully understood that, you need to interpret the case notes correctly, because the case notes are not written in grammatical English. Okay. They're not perfect sentences where you can just comprehend them and go, okay, 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 okay. What you're doing is you're getting these scribbly case notes and then you'll transform them into a letter. First step is to interpret them correctly. Just spend 20 seconds looking at this. Okay, these are medical case notes, but you can see the way in which they are written. You know, things in brackets, for example. We've got this little question mark here. We've got an abbreviation here over the counter, for example. Lots of abbreviations, actually. Got abbreviation here. We've got some time stuff here. We've got these symbols here. We've got a sort of partial sentence here, refer gastroenterologist for opinion and endoscopy if required. So these need to be interpreted correctly in order for you to write your letter accurately, okay? Then after you've interpreted the case notes correctly, you need to select relevant case notes, okay? This is a critical task. So for example, it's always based on the task. The task again was using the information in the case notes, write a letter of referral for further investigation and definitive diagnosis to the gastroenterologist, Dr. Jason Roberts at Newtown Hospital, 111 High Street, Newtown. Now, I don't know if these are correctly selected or not. I just did this as an example, but this is what you need to do in your mind or with your pen when you start writing. You need to think, okay, the first two are relevant. The third one, irrelevant. The fourth one, relevant. And then you'll think, okay, that's not relevant. I'll get rid of that one. I'm not going to use this one. I'm not going to use this one. Yes, this is relevant because it's based on the task. Everything comes back to who you're writing to and why. And so on and so forth. You'll go through whether you actually do this or not with the pen. I'm not sure. It's up to you. Maybe just through your memory, you can just look at these. But this selecting relevant case notes leads to the next step, which is arguably, well, selection is super important, but the next step is really critical too, which is organizing those case notes logically into logical paragraphs. What you ultimately want to do is to group certain case notes together that have a theme, and you want to write a paragraph about that theme, right? So each paragraph will in and of itself be about a particular topic. You don't want to just mix different things together, okay? You want to go, okay, I'm going to put that case note, that one, and that one together into this paragraph here. The other critical thing about organization is you need to think about which case notes or which information you prioritize in your letter. Which information should go at the top of the letter, which should be immediately read by the recipient. Prioritization is something that the examiners look for when they're marking your writing. If you've got the most important information buried deep in your letter, that's going to be problematic, okay? So let's have a look at organization. Tell me which paragraph is better, A or B? Okay, you've just read that. That's cool. Just let me check everything's working in Zoom. Yep, nice. Okay, good. You're starting to put through your answers now. That's good. I'm going to read both paragraphs. Tell me which one is logically constructed. Which one is about a single theme? Which one is easy for the reader to interpret and understand? Paragraph A. Mrs. Smith has been suffering from a lingering lump in her throat for the past fortnight that may be the result of smoking. She first complained of the lump 3 weeks ago. Since then, the lump has become more noticeable. Okay, that's pretty cool because that paragraph seems to be about a lump. Awesome. What about paragraph B? Mrs. Smith has been suffering from a lingering lump in her throat for the past fortnight that may be the result of smoking. She has a sore tooth, which is now loose. She sometimes walks her dog on the beach with her husband. Okay, this is problematic because here we've got some information about a lump, then we've got information about a tooth, and then we've got information about the relationship she has with her husband, which is strange. This is a really poorly organized paragraph, okay? This, by contrast, is an excellent paragraph. So think about the way in which you put your case notes together to form logical paragraphs. Number 5, this is where your language skills come into it in terms of your written language skills. Number 5, transform the case notes accurately comes with organization. So what you'll do is you'll mentally organize your paragraphs and you'll think, okay, this one's about the lump, this one's about the lump, this one's about the lump. Then you have to write it out. Okay, then you have to turn that into a nicely written paragraph. So what you don't want to do is bad transformation. For example, Mrs. Smoth has suffered from lingering lump in his throat. Isn't it Mrs. Smith, her throat? You can see immediately a number of errors coming up here. There's a spelling error of the name, which, by the way, I have seen a lot. Be careful, both for the recipient of the letter and the patient's name. Make sure you get it right. It's Mrs. Smith. Now, Mrs. Smith is not a he, it's a her. Has suffer. Well, here we've just got a problem with the verb tense. Has been suffering. So choose your verb tenses wisely. Yes. Anyway, there's a number of grammatical errors here which are not good, right? Grammar, it's true that grammar only accounts for 20% of your grade, but if your grammar is so poor that it actually affects the readability of the rest of your letter, then that's worth much more than, or that will be much more problematic than just 20%. Okay. I think you get the idea here. So here's a good paragraph, which we just read before, and there's the bad paragraph side by side. Okay, this leads to number 6. The body of your letter should be between 180 to 200 words. Now, if you write more than 200 words, now, first of all, what does the body mean? The body means forget the address and the top section and the dear Dr. blah, blah, blah. Everything from there down is the body of your letter, okay? Basically, okay? It's almost the same. If you included the other information, it would be about 20 words less perhaps, okay? So take your whole letter minus 20 words, that's the body. Now, if you've written more than 200 words, you've probably included irrelevant case notes. Okay, you've probably selected some case notes that didn't need to be included. If your letter is too short, less than 180 words, well, either you've left out important case notes or your sentences are just far too short and brief. I've seen that before as well. I've seen a doctor, for example, who selected all the relevant case notes, but wrote such short sentences that the whole thing was just far too small. Remember, this still is an English language test, so you do want to write some longer, more complex sentences, vary your grammar a little bit, some short, simple ones, some compound ones, some complex sentences, a few discourse markers like firstly, although, blah, 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 blah. Now, if you write between 180 and 200, well, you've probably included all of the relevant case notes. It's a good indicator of length. Here's the biggest tip for writing. This is absolutely critical. Complete the task. Whatever that task says, write to the gastroenterologist for a definitive diagnosis. That's what you need to do. Okay? Don't do anything else. Here's the other tip. People go into this exam with memorized structures. If you're planning on using a memorized structure in your exam on Saturday, don't. Because the OET examiners know when you use a memorized template example, okay, a structure. You can have a basic structure in mind. Like, for example, the introductory paragraph should include such things as the reason why you're writing and the most important information. But then it's really up to you. Like, should you include the medications? It depends. Should you include the past medical history? It depends. It depends on what? It depends on the task. Okay, it depends on the task. Critical. So be flexible on test day and write to the task and use your natural language. The task will tell you who, what, and why, right? Okay, let's have a look at reading part A. This is the part that scares lots of people, and fair enough, it's pretty challenging. Here's an overview. You'll receive 4 short texts. They'll look a little bit different, each of them. Then you have a summary that'll have about 30 gaps. You'll have 15 minutes. So you've got about 30 seconds to find the right word for the gap. And then you just have to go. Here are the tips for reading part A. Scan, read the 4 texts. Identify them. This will only take you 5 seconds. Look at each of the texts. What is it? Text. The first text, for example, might be a Q&A. Second text might be an abstract. Third text may be a statistics or a graph. Fourth text might be, I don't know, a case study or a definition. Quickly read the 4 texts, okay? You actually sort of need to do this. You need to scan, read them, not read deeply, but you need to run your eyes over them to identify what each text is about, because they'll be slightly different. For example, text A1 might be about, let's say all the texts are about migraines. Let's say text A1 is about causes of migraines. Let's say text A2 is about, it's a graph and it's about frequency of migraines. Let's say text A3 is about a new type of drug to control migraines. Cool. And text A4 is a case study of a certain person who suffers from migraines. So they're all about migraines, but you can go, okay, I've forgotten what they were already, but this one's frequency of migraines. This one was the new medication for migraines. Because then after you've scanned, read, and you've looked at them and you've noticed the headings and what their information, the keywords, then when you're in the summary and it says something like a brand new prescription drug has been developed for migraine, you go, okay, I've got to go back to this text here, which was about the new drug. It'll give you a hint as to which text you need to look in to find that keyword. You don't go right to the beginning and back again. Okay, so these are the 4 texts, for example. Just spend 10 seconds identifying what type of text they are. Okay, that should be enough time. Text A1 is a Q&A. Text A2, below it, text A2 looks like some sort of graph or statistics. Fine. These are all about, looks like they're all about dementia. Text A3, again, dementia. Look at that heading though of text A3, physical activity, cognitive decline, and risk of dementia. Text A4, treatments for dementia. So they're all about dementia, but they all have a specific focus. It's critical that you know what they are and you scan, read them. So when you're in the summary, you can know which text to look for to find the gap. Here's the tips. Look at the summary. Each paragraph, the summary is broken into paragraphs. Each paragraph will relate to 1 or 2 texts. Take a word from the text, but remember to transform it. For example, have a look at this one. So from which text would these gaps come from? I'm beginning to think that it's probably going to come from the Q&A, right? Because rather than one specific condition, dementia is the name given to a group. I'm going to go back and look at these. I'm thinking that paragraph there is going to derive all of the information it needs from this text here. Common signs, what is dementia, for example. And again, if you look at this paragraph here, dementia is the name given to a group of da. Here's another tip which you should remember. Okay, the two things. One, sometimes you can take the word directly from the text and slot it in there. Beautiful, job done. Most of the time, you'll need to transform the word to make it fit grammatically. For example, it might be a verb in the text. For example, it might be transform, right? You need to take the word transform, but you go to put it in the gap and it doesn't fit grammatically. You need to change it into a noun, transformation. So you change it to transformation, then it fits. It's got the right meaning, different form, but that's fine. Second tip is each of these gaps can be 1, 2, or 3 words. No more than 3. 1, 2, or 3 words, okay? That's critical. Here's a super tip for this one. Your main objective in this part of the test, in reading part A, and this is where people go wrong, is they don't complete the entire summary. They try to be too accurate and too precise. Your mission in the 15 minutes is to complete the entire summary before the time runs out. You need to try to fill all 30 of those gaps. If you get 10 and they're all right, you will not pass your OET. If you get 30 and let's say 30, but only 22 are correct, you're probably going to pass your OET. If you're careful and you do 10, it ruins your chances of success, okay? So this is a strange one because people, of course, you're taught to read carefully, right? You need to, all through school and all through university, you have to read very carefully. In this one, you should try to read carefully, but the objective is not that. The objective is expeditious reading, speed reading, filling out that summary as quickly as you possibly can. Remember, each gap you get 30 seconds. If you get stuck on one, skip it, move on to the next one. Come back to it if you have time, or just leave it. It's better to do 3 rather than get stuck on 1 and spend a minute and a half trying to find 1. Okay. I don't want to scare you. This is all very doable, by the way. Listening part A. Let's have a little look at this one. Lots of questions here. So here's the overview. It's a dialogue between 2 people. You hear it like a doctor and a patient, or a dentist and a patient, or a nurse and a patient, for example. It's divided into sections, and you need to take notes of the most important parts on each section. Here are the tips. The title tells you what to listen for, and the number of lines determines the number of key points to note. For example, what do you have to listen for here? And how many key points do you need to take down? Well, it says details of incident. So when the nurse is talking to the patient and she's finding out what happened to little Johnny when he fell off his bicycle, you need to get the details of the incident, right? And how many points do you need to note? Well, you need to note these ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For example, Johnny might say, I was riding my bicycle down the hill. I wasn't wearing a helmet. I crashed into a fence. Then a car ran over my leg, and then the dog came out and bit my other leg. Dog bit other leg. Whatever, that was silly, but you get the point. Okay, it's obviously more difficult than that, but that's basically what you need to do. Here are some important tips about this particular part of the test, listening part A. You are not penalized for writing irrelevant information. So let me give you an example of that. So let's say the point the examiners are looking for is Johnny wasn't wearing a helmet on his bicycle, and you write not wearing helmet, which is fine. You don't need to write full sentences, just note not wearing helmet. But let's say you write not wearing helmet and front wheel of bicycle crooked. That's fine. The extraneous bit, they won't penalize you for it. As long as you have that first bit about not wearing helmet, boom, you get the mark. You're not penalized for irrelevant information. The problem is the conversation moves very quickly, so you may not have time to write the other points as well. So in essence, you really do just need to focus on those main key facts and points. Right, number 2, you can write whichever key point on whichever line. Let's go back and look at this. So let's say first point is crashed bike. And the second point, you write not wearing, it needs to be good writing, by the way. I probably wouldn't pass because you can't understand that. Not wearing helmet. That's fine. So this is the sequence in which Johnny tells the story of the details of the incident. Now, if you wrote crashed bike on this line, for example, and you wrote not wearing helmet on this line, still okay. So it doesn't matter. Obviously, you want to keep it in sequence, and it's probably easier to do so. But if you do make a mistake and you miss the first one, you come back to it, it's still fine. Cool. Let's chat about the speaking overview. So in speaking, before we do that, I'm just going to check everything's okay in Zoom. Okay, nice. That's okay. Yep, everything's working. Good. So for speaking, you'll be given a role play card. Okay. In fact, you have to do 2 of them, but you get 1 role play card at each time. Given a role play card, you play the role of the medical professional, the medical person, and the OET actor, not the examiner, the interlocutor, the person playing the role of the patient plays the role of the patient. You have 5 minutes per role play card. You have 2 minutes to prepare, 2 to 3 minutes to prepare, and then you have to speak for up to 5 minutes. And you'll have to do 2 of these, right? Here are the tips. Let's look at the role play card. For example, this is the candidate card. This is your role play card. Well, you have a setting. You know this is in a suburban GP general practice. You have a scenario which tells you information about this patient. It will tell you whether you know the patient. It will tell you whether it's the first time you've met the patient. It will tell you the main medical issue that the patient is suffering from. This becomes your introductory remark. Hello, Mrs. Smith. I understand that you've just had, you've been suffering from a mild anterior acute myocardial infarct. You might not use that language with Mrs. Smith, of course, because that's way too complicated. You might say something like, I understand you've recently had a heart attack, Mrs. Smith. I'd just like to talk to you and take some notes. Now, can you tell me about what's going on? So you use that scenario as your introduction. Hello, Mrs. Smith. I'm going to talk about this scenario on this role play card, and I'm going to ask you to talk about yours, because Mrs. Smith also has her scenario here where she says, yes, that's right. I had a heart attack 6 weeks ago and blah, 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 blah. And you say, okay, then the conversation starts, right? Cool. Then you start to move into the tasks. And what you'll notice about these tasks is, by the way, you get to hold this role play card in your hand. You don't have to give it back. You don't have to memorize it. It's here. So what you're doing is you're reading, speaking, listening, reading, speaking, listening, reading, speaking, listening, something like that. Critically, on this task card, you should be looking at the verbs here. Find out, advise, explain, reassure, provide recommendations. These verbs tell you what to do. Right? These are what the OET examiners are listening for. Find out what is worrying the patient and be reassuring. Mrs. Smith, can I ask you what are your concerns today? Find out what's worrying the patient. Beautiful, just did that. And be reassuring. I can assure you that it's going to be okay. Your recovery will be very speedy. In fact, you might be out of the hospital within the next 2 weeks, something like that. What about number 2? It says advise. Advise the patient of the importance of joining the cardiac rehabilitation program. Mrs. Smith, it's going to be really important that you join the cardiac rehabilitation program because ... advising. Okay, so that's what you're doing with each of these. Now, just be aware that Mrs. Smith's role play card directly connects to yours. So when you say find out, she will then give you information. When you say advise, she will accept or she will decline. There's sort of they're connected like this, right? Yeah. Okay. I don't know what the biggest tip is here. I've forgotten. Here's the tips. You take control. So you're the medical professional. You initiate the conversation. You maintain the conversation. If the conversation stops, it's up to you to ask a question. Number 2, listen to the patient. You can't just speak. You need to also listen to what she says, because you're also great on your ability to respond. So yes, it's a speaking test, but in order to respond appropriately, you need to listen carefully as well. As I said, you need to read, speak, listen, speak, read, etc. That's how it works. The big tip here is you need to focus on communication, not performance. You need to focus on actually having a conversation with the patient, not just you speaking wonderfully and going through the tasks. Okay, this is a good thing too, because if you get nervous before test day or on test day, which is completely normal, by the way, you should be looking at that patient and asking questions and listening to them and then speaking and responding and looking at the cut. If you're not listening to them, you'll be too self-absorbed and it'll make your anxiety actually worse. So it's better to go outside of yourself, put yourself, listen. If you're listening to that patient and then you're responding carefully and you're going back, it'll actually make the role play a lot easier for you psychologically as well. Okay, here's the last OET super duper tip that I can give you. And if you're taking the test in May, you may want to think closely about this. If you haven't done so already, you need to prepare properly. This test is by no means simple. It is by no means easier than any of the other tests. It is extremely challenging, especially reading part A. Reading part B, by the way, is also a real challenge, and writing. So if you're thinking about preparation, you may want to think about E2 Language, where the OET, one of the OET's premium preparation providers, which means that we know our stuff and we have a very good course, all online. It's comprehensive, it's convenient, and it's effective. Cool. All right, I'll stick around and answer some questions. Somebody asked before, what is your tips for reading part B? Well, reading part B is multiple choice, so it's very straightforward in terms of the task that you have to do. But it's challenging in that the questions themselves are just extremely difficult. If you haven't seen the reading part B lecture on YouTube, check that out, or go across to e2language.com. Swanakanthi, you'll have to send a message to help.e2language.com. Go to help.e2language.com to find out what happened to your tutorial. Jasmine, sir, in IELTS, first comes introduction, then 2 of body, then summary, but in OET, how to write in total, not clear due to poor network. Okay, again, this is the thing, Jasmine, there's no set structure for these letters. There's a basic structure, right? But you need how many paragraphs you use, what goes into which paragraph. It's not like that at all. It's not IELTS. Completely depends on the case notes, completely depends on who you're writing to and why, depends on whether you know the doctor, whether the patient knows the doctor, all sorts of information. There's no set structure. Hawker Saeed, thanks for your nice lecture. Please, I would like to know if speaking part contains a physical examination or not. No. No physical examination. You don't have to touch the patient. You'll just be, your voice will be recorded on a device, and that's it. Can I mark notes on the question papers? Yes, you can. What about spelling mistakes in both the listening and writing? Spelling in listening is not a problem. They let you off with bad spelling. Spelling in reading part A is a problem. You need to get the word right, spell it right in order to get the point. Please provide online classes as per your package. I'm not sure what you mean there, Honor. Just go to e2language.com, click on OET. Give some tips on transformation in writing. Okay, so what you're doing is you're taking that case note and you're turning it into a phrase or a complete sentence. It needs to be accurate grammatically. It needs to have the right verb, it needs to have the right preposition, etc. If you're concerned about your grammar, go to e2language.com. We've got a whole series on grammar for OET writing. Check those videos out. They're very good. In writing, when stated, write a letter to a doctor. Is this a referral letter? It depends. It'll say in the task the nature of the letter. It will either say it explicitly or it will say it implicitly. So for example, it might say write a referral letter to the dermatologist, or it might say write a referral letter to, sorry, it might say write to the dermatologist to find out additional information. Or it might say, look, it'll be, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but it'll be clear from the task what type of letter to write. How many questions should be correct in reading and listening in order to get an 8 or an, I have no idea, actually. Jay, is that E2 language examples more standard than real OET exam questions? I'm not sure what you mean by more standard. They're constructed to be the same as the OET exam questions, okay? Can you please give some advice on listening part B? My advice is check out the lecture on YouTube about the different question types for listening part B. If you know the question types, it'll make your life easier. Spelling mistakes in writing. Yes, you are penalized for spelling mistakes in writing. How are we going to address the patient in speaking if no name is stated in the role play card? Good question. You can I just recommend saying Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith, right? It's a very common last name. Excuse me. So you can say you're speaking to let's say the OET person is a man. It doesn't say his name, but let's say it says you've met this patient before. Maybe you're his GP. So you say, hello, Mr. Smith, how's things, right? Just use Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith. Cool. Alyssa, thank you, Jay. I have learned a lot, even though I'm only on your budget package. That's great. There's lots of information in the budget package. That's cool. Samir, do you have a course for doctors specifically? Our speaking, listening, and reading is doctor specific. Our writing is nursing specific. Still very helpful to do those case notes because it's the same method: interpretation, selection, organization, transformation. We are currently writing doctors' medical notes at the moment, case notes. They will be on the website hopefully within a couple of weeks. So yes, we'll have a whole section for doctors writing soon, but in the meantime, still very good practice to sign up. I heard that the listening test is very fast. Should I practice listening test in a faster way? Yes, both listening part A and listening part B are normal spoken English. They're not like the IELTS test. If you remember, the IELTS test is very like, hello, I would like to buy a package, please. And it's kind of slow and artificial. These are real. So yes, it's a bit more difficult. How do examiners calculate the test marks? No idea. Will you please provide us some useful materials to practice? Yes, indeed. Go to e2language.com. You sign up for free. There's a Start for Success package. If you go to the OET website, you'll get some free material. I'm a nurse and my confidence level is very low. Then you should prepare. Boost your confidence. Okay, I'm going to go to YouTube Live and answer some questions. Jay, I just wanted to know whether you have a package available for just writing correction. No. Our packages differ. You can definitely focus on writing because you can take your 45-minute tutorial and just focus on writing. That'll be extremely helpful. And you also get writing assessments. So I guess the answer is yes, but you choose to focus on writing. Okay. Jay, same question. Is there any way to avail to take just speaking coaching on E2? Yes, same thing. Yes, you can. You can take them in your tutorials. Yeah, you do practice role plays with the E2 teacher. And then, by the way, these are very good teachers, very well experienced, been teaching OET for a long time, native English speakers, great qualifications. They'll certainly help you out. How long or how many hours is the test? I guess it's like 2.5 hours. And then the speaking. So it's about, I guess it's about 3 hours all up. Similar to the IELTS test, I imagine. Cool. I'm going to leave it there. I think because my brain's starting to fade and I've got to do some consultations. I'm just going to leave you with this thing here. Just bear with me. All right. If you have any questions, if you need any help, go to this website here, help.e2language.com. You send a little message through here and we'll get back to you and answer any of your questions you may have about the course or the OET or anything like that, okay? So go to help.e2language.com. Otherwise, just go to www.e2language.com and you can think about signing up for a package to start preparing. Cool, I'm gonna leave it here or else I'll be here all day answering your questions. If you're taking the test on Saturday, I wish you the best of luck. Good luck. I hope you get it. I hope you crack it. And yeah, if you're taking the test in May, think about some good preparation. If you're not successful this time, think about good preparation. I think that's important. Cool. See you guys later. Thanks very much.